In this next tutorial, we can now, with having completed all 5 of the input screens, we can start to look at some results. And namely, first we're going to go into the screen entitled Detailed Budget, and I'll talk you through what we see there. So here in the screen, there's an upper half and a bottom half. Let's address the upper half first. This first upper left section is basically the computation for our expected revenue for the farm for their crops for the 2023 year. So it's just a buildup of our expected yield, which in this case is 213, our 900 planted acres, which will produce 191,700 production bushels. Recall that we contracted 10% of our crop, and we therefore would have, if we deliver those yields, 172,500 corn bushels to sell, to market on the futures. Recall we didn't market any basis as of yet, and so we have to sell all of our expected crop in terms of locking basis. Note that 607 was the price at which we locked the futures. That was our January 3rd price that we discussed previously. And it was good that we sold our 10% then, because prices have fallen quite a bit through to March 10th. They're now $5.58 a bushel harvest prices as compared to where they were back in January. Wish we'd have sold probably some more. But we got 10% of our crop sold at the 607, and the rest of our crop, if we were to sell it today or contract it today, would be at a $5.58 futures price. We haven't contracted any of our basis yet, but we are going to assume that we generate 15-cent basis on all of our bushels. And if we were, therefore, the sum of our contracted grain in corn is $116,000. The sum of our uncontracted grain, based on current harvest prices, is $962 on the futures, $29,000 on the basis, $991,000 in total. Our crop revenue for corn would today be expected to, as of March 10th of 2023, be expected to equal $1,107,000. And our realized price per bushel, the blend of our futures and what we've sold and what we haven't sold, plus our basis, would be $5.78 a bushel. Now that you understand that column, you can follow that logic for the full season beans, wheat, and DC beans, and we can sum that up. And importantly, our revenue, whole farm revenue for our crops, whole farm crop revenue would be $2.141 million. That, of course, assumes that harvest prices don't change and that we deliver our expected yields. This upper right section is simply a summary of all the key assumptions that were used to develop this model, so that we can have it in one place and we can refer to it and eventually be able to print these off and maybe save them. You'll note that our model run date is listed at March 10th. Here are our expected farm yields. We've not sensitized our yields yet because we're assuming that we will deliver the projected yields. We will later on describe to you how to use these yield sensitivity factors. Prices of the current, you've got the current harvest futures prices. We also have not sensitized those prices at this point. We'll discuss how to do that later. Here you can see our marketed futures. As we discussed earlier, we've marketed 10% of our crop, expected crop, and here's the price at which we've marketed those futures. We don't include basis here just because it's kind of a clutter for the screen, but we do have all of our marketed futures. Finally, we've got a summary of our crop insurance. Recall, to this point, we have not selected any crop insurance for corn or for beans, but we did select an 80% RP policy, farm-based RP policy for winter wheat. You can see here that policy is going to cost us $6,000, And as we add corn and bean policies, our crop insurance expenses will increase. And finally, here were our title selections. We put all of our corn acres in PLC. We put all of our bean title acres into ARCO, and all of our wheat title acres into ARCO. And this is an estimated MYA price. This is an important determinant of how the quantity of payments at these current prices. There wouldn't be any payments for any of either PLC or ARCO, but we do produce an estimate of MYA in sensitivity analysis that will be a key driver to estimated future payments in downside scenarios. This bottom half now is our budget. It's a static budget based on all the information that we've put in. We've gathered from the outside all the information about our farm, all the information about what we've selected so far. You'll see each crop's expected revenue. Here you have your revenue for the corn crop, $1,001,000, $793,000 for the beans, $114,000 for the wheat, $127,000 for the DC beans. To that same total, $2,141,000 of crop revenue. That's the same number that we derived above. Of course, we have an additional $50,000 of other revenue coming in related to our side business that we discussed earlier. Based on the budgets that we pulled in, and we didn't customize them. Had we customized them, they would all flow through here. We can see that we would expect to spend in the aggregate about $351,000 on fertilizer, on chemicals and crop protection, $197,000, seed, $203,000, and so forth. As we move down, there's a couple features that I would like to highlight. Well, first of all, note that crop insurance, we've not selected any corn crop insurance yet, and therefore our cost of crop insurance, the premium, is zero. Same for full season beans. Here's our $6,000 we're paying for winter wheat crop insurance, and zero for our DC beans. As we go back and select policies, these numbers will become calculated by the IFBT model based on our selections, and they will then become a cost that appears in our standard budget. Working down to a few additional items just to make you aware, at this point we have not varied yields. We're assuming that we're going to achieve our budgeted yields. But to the extent that we fell short of yields, this line item called yield-based adjustment to non-land costs is where we would have an offset calculation. If we fell short of yields, our corn costs would be down modestly, and you would see that reduction in costs here. I'll also note, to the extent we had variable land rent, I will address this in a future tutorial. We could have adjustments to land rent based on our actual revenues for each crop. Of course, we've selected straight cash rent, so this will always be zero until we change that assumption. But that's what that line item is intended to mean and to produce. Finally, I want to alert you to the fact that we incorporate the total land costs into our model. And if you go to this bottom part, recall that the local land rent per acre, cash rent, was $282 an acre. That's what we're paying for our 1,500 rented acres. But we also own 500 acres, and based on the cost, the cash flow, the cash out the door, in terms of mortgage payment, in terms of property taxes and land repairs, well, the cost of that land is only, in terms of cash out of pocket, $160 an acre. Therefore, when we look to see what our rented land costs on a per acre basis, they will be the blend of those two numbers. Now, most economists appropriately say, well, a farmer should be earning their opportunity cost of rent. For purposes of our model, we take a slightly different approach, which is to say we want to know all the cash coming in the door in the crop year and out the door in the crop year. and determine an estimate of pre-tax cash flow for the farmer. Uh, uh, and one of the reasons for that is farmers that are very well capitalized, let's say they own all their land and they've got it all paid off, well, they're going to have a lot lower land costs than the farmer that is cash renting their land. And that farmer that's better capitalized may make different decisions, may be willing to take more risk, for example, than a farmer that is less well capitalized and is running closer to the edge and needs to be more concerned about downside risk. A few other things to note here. This first panel is all in dollar terms. The next panel is dollars per acre. You'll be able to see here very quickly that based on the budgets included herein, you're going to generate $188 an acre for your corn, $147 an acre for your beans, and your wheat DC beans really need to be considered together. We provide that over here in the far right corner. Our wheat DC beans together are going to produce $87 an acre. Now, our wheat DC bean decision was made effectively last fall when we decided to plant winter wheat. There's nothing really we can do about this now. However, as we look ahead, we could make a determination to shift acres from, for example, out of beans and into corn to capture that expected incremental profitability. And we'll do some testing in that regard as we move forward. But here you have a static budget that will give you an estimate of your farm's revenue, $2,191,000, and your pre-tax cash flow of $329,000 for the 2023 crop year, assuming deliver your yields, expected yields, and assuming harvest prices don't change from here on out. In the next screen, we'll show you probably the money picture of this entire tool, which is the sensitivity analysis that falls out of this when you vary futures, vary prices, and you vary yields. But this would provide you with a static budget that you could take to your lender, you could take to third parties, and show what your expectations would be for this crop year. With that, we'll move on to the next screen, which is very important, which is the sensitivity analyses.